It's welcome all. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. Episode 67. We've had a little break. We've called it three-quarter time. Referred to as only a week, but it covered 2 episodes. So we've refreshed a little bit. Well, I don't feel very, very fresh today, to be honest. That's another story. The WA property market, is it the calm before the storm? So that's our title tonight. That's what we're going to have a chat about. And amongst other things, of course, we will get back to Oscar's stats and have a review, get him to review the sales market and the rental market and just see what's been going on over the last week or two and what his thoughts are. We'll exchange our thoughts and give you our opinions and just sort of have a bit of a brief on where we see the market going, just our observations on the ground. No great science involved, but just because we're both involved in different fields in the property market, it gives us an opportunity to see what we're finding out from on the ground, not just, well, it's statistics, but it's also talking to people and observing things that we're seeing. Discovering answers to your property questions. We've got a couple of questions that have asked it relative to the title tonight, so that works out well. Property headlines. There's been a number of different articles that I've been keeping an eye on, so we'll look forward to having a quick run through those and see those. And what's on the notice board? Oscar loves what's on the notice.
I love that.
Of course, I know you do. And then the as is the tradition, we always finish up with an if question. So for those who want to know, I'm Tony Viner. He's Oscar D'Souza. Mate, welcome. Good to have you back. Good to be back, to be honest. How is the world? What's been going on? What's the latest? Tell me more.
Mate, it is great to be back. And, even though it's only been 1 to 2 weeks or a couple of episodes, between you and me and the Gatepost, it actually feels like quite a bit longer. This feels a little bit different doing this, which is a bit different to our normal weekly routine. Mate, look, everything in WA property just remains strong, just remains resilient. It is just... it's a great time to be a seller in WA. It's a great time to be a landlord in WA. Buyers are still finding it tough to find the property that they want at the price that they want to pay. And renters certainly are still finding it very tough as well. There's still a shortage of supply. There's a great deal of demand. Rental prices are continuing to increase as well. So, but this isn't the way that it's always been. It's been this way now for definitely 12 months and probably now heading towards 18 months, which was basically the whole, if we take ourselves back 18 months ago, that was pretty much the start of the COVID period. And as we know, our WA property market bounced out of the COVID period bigger and faster than any of us ever would have imagined. But the 4 or 5 years prior to that, we've had a pretty flat property market, which hasn't been good for the sellers, and it also hasn't been good for the landlords. So the roles are reversed a little bit now. And the big question is, well, how long is it going to last? And are we still in a bit of calm before a storm as we head towards the end of the year? So hopefully we'll unpack some of that over the next 40 minutes.
Hey, you talk about a good season. We won't get too personal when it comes to the AFL football, but
Geelong.
Not only that, I took my grandsons to the football last weekend, right? Last Friday. Took them to the preliminary final. Now, we did give them a membership, our grandkids, to the Cats. And so we picked them up, the 2 grandsons, and they had their beanies. They didn't have their beanies on. They decided they wouldn't wear the beanies, but they had their scarves on and they were ready to go. Halfway through the second quarter, the cat scarves came off and they were up on the chairs cheering the opposition, the D's. The turncoats. How quick was that? So poor old Poppy and Lolly were sitting there going, "What are you doing?"
Isn't it phenomenal though, TV? Isn't it phenomenal just the way Perth, WA seems to be getting behind the D's? Yeah, like it's just, but there's a few Bulldogs fans around a bit, but certainly few and far between. I think everyone, and I'm trying to work out, do you know the answer why? Why is everyone getting so much behind the D's?
I think it was a bit like when the Bulldogs back in 2016 were in the grand final, hadn't won for years, and the number of people I've spoken to who said, you know what, if such and such doesn't get in, or the Eagles aren't in, or if the Cats aren't in, I wouldn't mind the D's winning, only because I think, and I also think there's a bit of Neil Danaher associated with it. What he's done for football and his MND. I think that's there's that, and don't forget, I was listening. I drove up from to Geraldton this afternoon, as you know. So I'm a bit. If I fall asleep halfway through, you know why. But I was listening to a podcast, and Gary Lyon was talking about Jimmy Steins, who got the club back up and running, and so there's a lot of passion involved. There's a lot of history involved, and mate, they were seriously awesome. But I must admit, I was quite shocked to be at Optus Stadium in WA and to see the number of blue and red and people. It was distinct advantage for the crowd with regard to the D's, from my observation.
Right.
Quite surprising. I thought it might have been a bit 50-50 or maybe even more Geelong than the D's, but I was quite surprised. And to think that they sold as members, they were not expecting, I think there was only 1,000 members or something, registered members in WA, and they sold all 12,000 allocated tickets. In fact, there were some levels, categories of members, I think it was category 3 or whatever, didn't even get a chance to get a ticket because they'd already sold out. So that's exciting. But we've got what's on the notice board, so we'll bring up a couple of things that outside that. But this time of the year, I think it's a real buzz. Driving up to Geraldton today, some of the crops look unbelievably good. So, in a farming sense, which is property related, I think that'll have a flow-on effect. We talk about mining, but I think that will have a flow-on effect. So there's lots of good things happening here in WA, which, again, we reach out to our people in the East Coast. We probably brag a little bit, and we're very lucky what's going on at the moment, but it is a good time of the year, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're super fortunate. I don't know that we call it bragging. I think there's a certain level of, we're lucky. We're certainly lucky. We can't argue about that. But what's the word that starts with A that just escapes me at the moment? We're very... I've actually had a bit of a memory blank, but
you've had a couple of memory blanks lately. You did that last time.
We're very appreciative, and we live a life of gratitude. That doesn't start with A, does it? But no.
It's got an A in it, though. It does have an A in it.
We're certainly living a life of gratitude over here in WA. And, it's been so long over in New South Wales and now Melbourne or Victoria with their cases going up as well. And it's a different world over here in WA, and we see them on the news each night. But and we just expect that's what we're going to see, and the case numbers just continue to rise. So it's a very, very sad state of affairs for everyone involved over there. And we're just in a fortunate place. It's inevitable that we'll have our outbreak over here as well. But, we don't want to spend too much time thinking or talking about that right now. We just live the life of gratitude that we've got and remain humble about it too, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And for my little break, I went to Darwin for 6-7 days, and it was, mate, that was sensational. I even got to try a bit of crocodile. And had crocodile for a meal one night. Beautiful.
Oh,
yeah. People ask me what was it like. I would say probably better than chicken. It was just yum, sensational. But getting back to that, I got the opportunity, as you know what I'm like. I don't mind a chat, and I got to talk to a number of people. I spoke to different people. I went and had a chat to a couple of blokes that were working away on a job, tradies, and I said, "Hey guys, have you got a minute?" And, of course, they didn't mind stopping to have a chat. And same scenario that we're experiencing here. Can't get staff under the pump. So it was a really interesting observation. I was planning to go and have a chat with a couple of real estate people, but I didn't quite get to that. But I did speak to a number of people from different parts from New South Wales and Victoria in particular. And their observation was, you know what, we're seriously entertaining the idea about WA because of its affordability. You know, we've got a lot of money tied up in our property here over there in the East Coast with what's going on. You know, they're up in Darwin for 4 or 5 weeks because they sort of said, well, there's not much sense in going back to Victoria because we're in lockdown. Admittedly, these people, majority of them were retired, and they asked the question why I wasn't. But it was an interesting observation and interesting talking to these people and getting their perspective. One of the property, and of course, when they found out what we did, they were really interested in, you know, asking questions about WA property, etc. So it was.
TV, just on that, do you really think that people will make the move from New South Wales and Victoria over to WA because of the COVID-related issues, or is COVID really just a bit of a catalyst for them to look more seriously at WA, consider the lifestyle and the climate and the affordability that WA has, and therefore, like, is it really just a catalyst, or do you think people are looking to escape the more COVID-ridden states? Because I would have thought that, you know, what they're going through over at the moment, it's a relatively short-term or short to medium-term thing, and it's just going to be something that we have to live with. And with the way that the vaccines are going, I would have thought that, you know, I don't know. Do you think people will just get up and leave because of COVID?
I'll tell you what, we'll divert. We won't go. I won't answer that now because I think that's part of what our headline is. So we'll go. What we'll do, we'll go back, and I think we will go back to what we want to start with, and that's more particularly OD's stats.
Okay.
Beautiful. It's over to you, my friend. OD stats.
Mate, thanks. You got me a new little tune over there. That's very innovative of you. Okay, well, as I said in the open, I mean, our WA property market, without me sounding like a broken record, is just very, very strong, both in the sales field and in the rental market as well. And as we have made comment a number of times before, what is unusual about that is normally we see one lead in the other. Normally we'll see a strong sales market and the rental market will be a bit flatter, or the rental market will be very strong and the sales market will often be a bit flatter. But for a long time now and heading towards 18 months, we've had strong sales and we've also had a very, very strong rental market, which is reported in the stats. It's not just a trend that I observe, but it's actually backed up anecdotally week in, week out. So just in the last week, closing the weekend just gone, there were another 902 sales in Perth. Now, back in our normal time, if I go back 2 years ago, our normal time would be 500 to 600 sales. But since the commencement of COVID, and really when we got to about May and June last year, our sales market really started to take off, and we started consistently seeing sales volumes of 800 to 1,000 sales every week. And you know, we hadn't seen a market like that probably since 2013 or 2014. So 902 sales in the last 7 days. The same week last year, there was 785 sales. So still a really, really strong sales volume. Listings really do tell the story though, TV. And we did, over the last couple of months, our listings did get back up to close to the 10,000 mark. And that's in WA. However, as winter's gone on and as spring has approached, we've actually dropped down to about that lowest point that we've been all year, and we're back down to about 8,500 listings. So at 8,500 listings, it's way too low. There's lots and lots of buyers around. Compared to this time last year, there was 10,664 listings available this time last year. So today we've actually got 20% less stock than where we were at this time in September last year. And we know this time in September last year, we were really busy anyway. So that stock level continues to shorten, and I can only see that shortening further because right now we're at the start of the spring selling season. That's what September is. And that's when a lot of properties will come on the market, and it's probably the busiest time of the year in WA real estate. But in terms of having that increased level of stock, we're just not seeing it, because the amount of transactions that are happening every week is almost touching 1,000 transactions. Rental market again though is still really, really strong. Another 700 properties leased in Perth just in the last 7 days. This time last year it was 786, so a little bit of a drop. That drop is by no means because of a drop in demand. The drop is only there because as we've seen in the sales market, there's been a lot of investors that have been selling their investment properties. And when they sell their investment properties, they're typically not selling to other investors. They seem to be selling to owner-occupiers. So what that does is reduce the amount of rental stock available on the market. Right now in Perth, we're probably as low as what we've been anytime in the last 18 months, basically just under the 1% mark in terms of a rental vacancy. 2,324 properties available in the whole of Perth, and that's down 25% from where we were at this time last year. So
really
down 25% in terms of the available stock in the same week last year. So it's not that long ago. So the rental market continues to struggle along. With the rental home opens that I've been doing myself, I think it is very suburb sensitive. And so as you're closer to this city, as you're closer to the coast and those more desirable attributes that people look for in a rental property, and also being close to major transport networks, you'll have a greater demand for rental properties. And as you move out further into the suburbs, further away from the CBD and also away from the coast, the demand probably drops off a bit. But it doesn't drop off and die. It just drops off to a more sustainable level. So, and for those fans in Gero, there's often a few people in Gero watching, and both myself and TV still have connections to Gero. If you're looking for a rental property in Gero today, you've got a great range of 48 properties to choose from through the whole of Geraldton. So that is a very, very low vacancy rate. And we're back under 50 properties for Geraldton. As we approach Christmas, that number's only going to go further south. So not good news for renters. It's sort of indifferent news for buyers because buyers have gotten used to it for so long. But in terms of the rental crisis, we just can't see any easing of the rental pressure there.
Wow, that's And the question that other people were asking me while I was away, and as you know, as I say, I drove up this afternoon to Geraldton. I was meaning to leave yesterday. It's taken me a day and a half to get to leave. It's been chaos, but I've got a fair bit on my plate. But I'm looking forward to be here for at least 2 weeks, and just to touch base with not our clients, but also a few people in the real estate, see if we can't have a chat and find out how they're going and how things are progressing and what their observations are. But 48 properties, that's not very many at all. And I know as far as our settlement agency is concerned, I would suggest we're probably not the biggest as we once were. And I'm not losing sleep over that. I'm comfortable with what we are doing and how we're doing it. But that being said, my staff are super busy. And we're still struggling to get another staff member. We're really keen to get someone on board, and like everything, and that's an interesting thing with regard to what I observed up at Darwin too. The number of people that were working in hospitality were actually international people, internationals who were here on what they call COVID visas. So they were here when COVID struck. And their visas, now they are here on their extended visas. And I spoke to one young Irish girl, and there's 20 of them that came from the Gold Coast to Darwin, and they are now planning on, they all met, they didn't come overseas together, but they all met in Australia, in Queensland. They've moved to Darwin, and now their plan is, I think, in October, this girl said there'll be 20 of them at least of her group of friends are moving to WA and will be looking for work.
Yeah,
and
right.
surprised the number of Australians, and I was surprised. That's how I came around have the discussion. The number of foreign people, and I say that with the greatest respect, if you know what I'm saying, but international young people that were working in the various cafes and restaurants and hotels and shops, etc. But it was also interesting the number of them were planning to move to WA and find work here. And they asking the question about why they were sort of a little bit surprised that there didn't appear to be a lot of Australians working. And I asked that question myself. So that was coming from them. That was their observation.
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, we know, when you get down south, the southwest of WA, where there's people have moved down there for lifestyle, but then there's a lot of people that still holiday through there. And the reports always, hospitality-wise, is that they just can't get the staff that they need down there. So the good news for the Irish people that you're talking about, or any of the international workers, is that they're not going to have problems finding a job, whether that's in Perth or even in the southwest. So that's really, really good. And I could only think for those that, why aren't there more Australians? Well, I know that the mining sector is really drawing a lot of Australians and a lot of people out of the cities and out of the Perth metropolitan area, because we've got one hell of a mining boom going on, and there's many jobs, many incentives as well that they're advertising on the radio now, not just for a good salary, but really good living conditions, relocation costs, and just really great incentives for people to take up some sort of a FIFO roster whilst working in the mining sector. So, and that only further puts pressure on the tourism sector and the hospitality sector. So, there's just not enough people here in WA, TB.
No, which I should, remiss of me, before we go any further, refer to our disclaimer, our general advice disclaimer, and I'll refer because of our podcast. And remember, those that don't want to watch this for the next 30-40 minutes, then our podcast comes out every Wednesday, and the information on this podcast is regarded as general advice. Your personal objectives, needs, and financial circumstances, I'm going to be very careful here, were not taken into account when preparing this content. I will also add that, thank you very much, we always advise and recommend you seek personal, professional, and financial advice tailored to your specific individual needs before making financial, property, and investment decisions. And we cannot emphasize that enough. I've had someone asking me only a couple of days ago, I've got a couple of appointments with people here that are specifically reviewing their circumstances and asked me to give them some direction. And then we'll obviously direct them to various professional assistance when and where required. But I had one the other day where a client was trying to structure something, and I said, first things first, need to speak to your accountant. We need to get that right first in their particular circumstances. That's not everybody, but in this particular case, it was very, very important before they put pen to paper on a contract that they spoke to their accountant as to what structure and how that was to be. So can't emphasize that enough, because it can be a costly exercise if you don't get that right. I think we'll go to our next topic and get back to your question. So our title tonight was, the fact is it the calm before the storm? And personally, I think it is. In fact, I don't know whether there's a calm at all at the moment, but I sort of was having a think tonight and thought, what should our title be? And I thought, with some of the things that I've been conscious of, the phone calls that I've been having of late, for the first time in my life, I turned my computer off and my phone off for a week. I've never, ever done that in my life. And when I got home and I've since been phone calls, I thought, well, if that's how I'm going, how's everyone else going? Have you finding that?
Finding what? I didn't turn my phone off.
No. But what I'm saying is the inquiries and people ringing you and contacting you. Like if, we sort of say the calm before the storm, but is there already a bit of a storm?
little bit different in my game, obviously, TV, because obviously I'm 100% focused on property management. So I do have a consistent level of inquiry, both local, but then seems to be interstate inquiry as well, coming for property management services. So, but I think the focus really is still on the sales market, and in terms of, is it the calm before the storm, or is it a mini storm before the big storm? I absolutely think that it is. We've had great consistency over the last 12 months. It really has been consistent, but it's been very strongly consistent as well. Over that time, we've had low stock. Our prices, we know over here in WA, are low comparatively to New South Wales and Victoria. And we've also had very low interest rates. And if anything, with, like you pointed out to me before the show, those interest rates are probably going to stay lower for longer because of the economic damage that the lockdowns are having in the eastern states. So, I really think that we're going to have a big finish to the calendar year in WA property. The volumes that we're seeing at the moment, and we have seen basically all year, have been very consistently strong, but now we have moved into that spring selling period. We're not seeing a flood of properties come onto the market. There's a few, obviously, but there's many more buyers than there are sellers at the moment. And with money being so cheap, with our economy doing so well, job security is very good as well. I can only see that our real estate market is going to get stronger. We're going to see more growth. And what we really do need to see, though, is investors, which I think we'll talk about maybe in the next topic or in the next segment. But it would be great to see some more investors, because right now the investment potential of WA, the WA property market, it's enormous, because our rental market is so strong as well.
You were asking earlier on, and I said we'll wait to get to this section, this segment. With regard to, is it a catalyst, or is it driven by COVID? From my observation, and I intend to sort of make a few more inquiries and talk to a few more people, but there appears to be already an interest from East Coast people interested in WA. Now, is that because WA is identified as, I think, where do I read? The Real Estate Institute of Australia have done some property survey and have identified WA as being the most affordable state in the country. Now, does that influence? As I said to you, I spoke to some people retired, but they looked at WA and went, you know what, with what we're doing and with everything else that's going on, we'd entertain. We've got money tied up in Victoria in one case. All of a sudden, we'd free up a bit of cash, and we would still be able to buy a nice home in WA and have a good lifestyle. And it was interesting that some people who I had 3 different people that described Geraldton as being observed as being the best weather in the country over a yearly basis. And that was their comment to me when I made mention about that I was born in Geraldton. So there are, when you ask the question, I think it's probably more catalyst than it is COVID driven, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it would need to be as well, because if people, I do know that I've spoken to some tenants that have been wanting to lease properties here in WA, and they're wanting to get out of Victoria or wanting to get out of New South Wales, but more so with a short-term view. And by short-term, I mean maybe 1 to 2 years, something like that, where they'll come over here, they'll rent a property, they'll find a job, live life over here in WA. But once the COVID thing settles down, once everyone's vaccinated, and COVID is not really something that we talk about as being a pandemic anymore, it's just like a flu, and it's just, it's a bit further down the track, then, they'll always go back home to Victoria or New South Wales. So far as the interest from the east in the WA property market, certainly I've been seeing the interest that I see is all investment related. So I'm not talking to people that are wanting to pick up and actually relocate themselves over here in WA, but I am talking to people that see WA and Perth in particular as a really good investor market, where prices are pretty affordable. The rental market's strong. There's such a low vacancy rate. Rents are rising, and the interest rates are going to remain really low. So that all creates a great storm for capital growth in the capital city. So those are the sorts of inquiries that I'm taking from people in the east.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've had inquiry, but I think the fact being is there are, as much as some people might have the best intentions, it's going to be pretty hard to move here when you've got border restrictions. I don't think buying a house here in WA is going to give you automatic approval to come and live here, would it? Do you know what the rules are?
No, I don't. I mean, as I said, I'm dealing with investors that probably won't even get over here to have a look at what they're buying. You know, they'll have a look via the internet, and then they'll have me or someone else go and have a look at the property for them, and they might not even get over here to see the property. But I would have thought that if someone buys a property over here to live, I don't know. I don't think I've heard Mark McGowan talk about that. But what I do know is that the border is very well and truly shut to New South Wales and almost well and truly shut to Victoria as well. And you have to be doing something pretty special in order to be able to cross the border. And I don't know if buying a house is going to cut it.
Well, there's a lot of powerful people associated with AFL football, for example, who can't get here. So, you know, he's been pretty adamant about who's coming and who's not. And what the rules are. So it's a really good. I've done a little note here because I think that it's worthwhile inquiring where that stands. If you get a job here and you buy a home here, while there's border restrictions, where does that put you? It's so too bad to sit tight. Otherwise, I mean, I don't really know this for fact, but when you consider the fact that people are screaming out for work or for workers to get employees, then they can't get anybody because they can't come out, leave the state. So, they've got to have 14 days quarantine. But it'd be interesting to find that out, to see how restrictive that really is. And I would suggest it's probably very restrictive. So even if you have the greatest of intentions to move here, I would think at the moment that's not possible.
Yeah, just on that topic, mate. Have you had a jab or both jabs?
Yes. Yeah, I've got another one in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, right. Okay, I've got my first one this coming Friday, actually.
Yeah. No dramas. Didn't have any no repercussions or what do you call it? Symptoms afterwards. In fact, I was out doing my exercise that night, and Jude was most concerned. I said, if I was going to have any impact, I reckon I would have had it by now. But no, I had no issues in any way, shape, or form. No pain, no nothing, no cold. They said, I might get some cold or flu issues. So no, if you haven't had the jab, in fact, it's a discussion that I will have with my staff. Not that I'm going to put any restrictions on, but just to find out what their intentions are, and just see whether because I think it's going to get to a point where passports, etc., has already been suggested, haven't they? About a vaccine passport. So getting back to our topic, we've digressed a little bit, but getting back to our topic, so the calm before the storm, I think, and I was just trying to find a little article because they were indicating at one point that I did read something in one of the papers where they indicated that they felt that when the borders were open, WA would perhaps find a bit of an influx.
I don't think there's any question.
And I think that's, to me, and the question was asked to me the other day, like TV, should I entertain, I'm trying to buy something, but every time I look at something, I'm outside the ballpark price-wise. I think the point for those people that may be looking at buying, I wouldn't be hesitating, would you?
No. What you mean to wait and see what the market's going to do?
Yes.
No. You work out, you obviously work out what you think the property's worth. You work out your budget and what your affordability is. But don't, in this market, you're not going to be trying to pick up a bargain, or you're not going to try and test the market. If you want something, you're going to need to put your best foot forward. and also communicate very strongly with the real estate agent to let them know, I guess, how badly you want it, because it's not like you can just buy the next one around the corner, because that's the problem that we've got. We've got a shortage of stock, and there isn't the next one around the corner at the moment. So no, now's not a market to procrastinate or to hesitate.
And remembering too, we're now entering to this period of, as you emphasised before, we had our little 3/4 time break. We're entering spring, and spring is traditionally, even in a low market, is always a relatively busy time. People get up, vibrant, and do things. And I think in a busy market, and don't forget, we've had a busy winter, which is not traditional, and we've had a very wet winter. It's been a very cold winter, particularly in Perth, and yet it's still been very proactive. And so if you think that I think we've used this word before, if you think as a buyer you're going to be going in there and trying to discount the asking price, I think you need to be very, very, do your homework. And I've already had that comment by a couple of people. Every time we go in to put a price in, I said, yes, but are you putting in, have you done your homework, and are you putting in an offer that's realistic? Because more often than not, because there's so many buyers about, the sellers don't have to discount, not like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. But I also do know on the flip side, though, and just talking to a number of sales agents as well, there is a level of seller education that has to go on as well, because all the sellers keep seeing on the news is the lineup of people trying to get into home opens and properties selling at the first home open, or sometimes before it hits the net. So they're reading and seeing all this hype about, how strong our market is. And it's not hype. It actually is the truth. But then there's this sometimes a bit of a greed factor, or that over level of optimism where, a property is worth 750,000 or whatever, and someone will sit there and go, well, what about 850 or 825? Like, let's test the market and see how we go. That's never the way to do it, because there's only one way. When you price a property stupidly, there's only one way that it goes from the start, and that is down. Versus if it's worth 750, put it on at 750 or 760 and let the buyers come to the table and let them determine what the market price is as well. Because I promise you, whether it's the rental market or whether it's the sales market, they're working it out amongst themselves by how badly they want it. So you don't need to be optimistic with your pricing. The market will work it out for you. There's
not been a slowdown, has there? It just hasn't slowed down with activity. And no. I think eventually that is where, as we're saying, if you're entertaining buying, then I wouldn't be putting it off, because I think we're not going to see, particularly as I pointed out to you earlier before we came on air, as it was announced today, the Reserve Bank have said they have no intention of changing interest rates to slow down the housing market. They are saying there needs to be other ways of doing that, because the rest of the economy as such can't afford to have that increase. So it may be a case of the regulators having to clamp down on how they control the lending side of things. There might be a few more hurdles that you've got to jump when it comes to your loan application. And I read something the other day. I was going to our guest today was going to be our Dino, because he's I thought we'd get in it with a bit of finance, but he had another obligation, which I'll mention on our What's on the Notice Board. But there was a reference to home loan lending, and I'm trying to find where it was, but basically the regulations already there's a little bit of tightness. And there was an article that I read where they were suggesting that someone did a questionnaire, and it was quite interesting, that where people had basically faked their application with how much money they earned, how much money they spent, etc., which I thought in this day and age, with what you've got to go through, I would have thought those things have to be justified by pay slips and all those sort of things. So I found that quite an interesting. I'll have to find it when we get Dean on, because I found that quite an interesting observation that and it was quite a high stat. So I think the banks and that, they're going to be a lot tighter when it comes to your applications.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And just also going back to your previous point about that, you said there hasn't been a slowdown, has there? If you do remember back to around April, May, and probably as we approach June as well, there wasn't a slowdown, but we did see an increase in listing stock, and we got back up to around about 10,000 properties available through WA. And what that seemed to do was that crazy sting that we saw amongst the buyers where they'd fall over themselves just trying to get into the home open. We saw that sting sort of disappear a little bit, but the volumes of transactions each week still stayed high. But that fear of missing out wasn't there as much, because there was an increase in supply. But as I said, that 10,000 properties has come right back to 8,500 properties again. And I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll see that go from 8,500, head closer towards the 8,000 mark. And so, no, there hasn't been a slowdown. There was that slight decline in the FOMO, I guess, but that's well and truly back now. So with this spring selling season, and as we approach the end of the year, I can only see it getting stronger.
Yep. That's how I see it as well. And as I say, and you probably described it well, it's probably not the calm before the storm. It's probably a little. It probably is a storm just before the cyclone comes through. So it's. I think that's where we're really at, and that is, to me, that is a bit of a concern. And I look at this with regard to, getting back to the staff situation, getting back to people's patience and understanding that everyone's under the pump and things aren't going to happen as quickly as you'd like them to. And I think you've got to be realistic with your settlement dates. I think you've got to be realistic with your finance timeframes. And if the banks and the lending institutions and the regulators tighten things up with the processes, and they want more information, and they're going to check you a little bit more thoroughly than they already are, then guess what, folks? Don't expect that your timeframes are going to be any shorter than they already are. In fact, I would suggest, in a conveyancing sense, that the timeframes are going to be that little bit longer. And whether people say, "Oh yes, but this is what we normally do," it's not normal anymore. And I don't think it's going to be normal for the next few months or so. Maybe longer.
Just on that TV, I know that a couple of months ago we were talking about timeframes for finance and other conditions, but primarily finance when people are writing up offers. Is it still the recommendation that it needs to be at least 40 days or 45 days, or has that dropped back to, can people now do 28 days or even 21 days?
Look, there's been occasions where some lenders have been doing it and I think they've sorted themselves out with their processes, and they seem to be going okay. But I'm still suggesting to people. In fact, I did a contract for a client yesterday, and I'm still recommending on or before 30 business days, because there are so many delays. And look, everyone gets all a bit itsy bitsy about all the 30 business days, but hang on, if it's approved in 14 days or it's approved in 20 days, then settlement, and then most lenders want a minimum of 28, 30 business days from finance approval. So if your finance approval is within that time frame, don't get too carried away about 30 days. It's only just saving everybody's angst and anxiety. Yeah. And then if the finance approval comes through in 14 days, then settlement will be 28 days or 30 days from that date, So, but it's a little bit of a safety valve. It saves everybody a bit of extra work later on. And it's just a recommendation. And there are still people, including real estate agents, who say, "Oh no, that's not normal. Our normal thing is 21 days." Well, it's not normal in the current market. Simple as that. Yeah. That's my point. Yeah. That's my point of view. So, but I just
scanned up and saw the time, mate. Are you keeping an eye on the time?
I know, I did. No, not really. I've got excited now that we're back on track. We're back up and running. Hey, listen, I think what we might do. How about we we might just go to
The
Discover the
notice
Us.
board. Oh, not the notice board.
A couple of questions came up. In fact, you had one. Are the investors back in WA?
I don't think there's many investors in WA that are looking for WA investments, but there is certainly people in the eastern states that are looking to invest in WA. There's no question about that. It's not a strong investor market. It needs to be a lot stronger, and we need investors basically, because investors obviously are going to buy investment properties and rent them out, and we really urgently need investment properties or rental properties here in WA. So it's a great time to invest for the reasons that I already mentioned, but in particular we just need to ease that housing pressure on renters as well. So no, it's not strong. It's not where it needs to be. It's better than where it was 12 months ago, though.
Yeah, and that's my observation as well. But I find it interesting you're saying there's not a lot of WA investors.
Yeah, well, not that I'm seeing, and certainly from the real estate agents that I talk to, not from what they're seeing either. What there has been over the last 12 to 18 months, TV, is an outflux, if I can call it that, an outflux of people divesting from their investment properties, because they had 4 or 5 years of no growth, and some of them even had negative growth, and they just basically had a gutful, and they've now seen an opportunity where prices are back up to what they paid, or they might be able to recover their money, or maybe even make a little bit of money, and irrespective of what the future holds so far as future capital growth, they're just wanting to quit them, pay off the debt basically, and not have the stress or the worry anymore, because that 4 or 5 years really hurt them. So there has been a lot more people selling their investment properties in the last 12 to 18 months than there have people been buying those same investment properties. And that in part is why we've got such a rental shortage here in WA.
It's interesting you say that, because I would have thought, on the basis of the lack of return in the banking, money in the bank, what, we've got a good market, we've got demand. I would have thought that would be, particularly if you've got a self-managed super fund, or if you're relying on a bit of extra income associated with, then I would have thought that may have been something worthwhile investing in. So it's interesting that you're saying.
Yeah, look, I think it is, and I'm sure the cycle will come back around, because history tells us that it always does, even if it's taking quite a while this time. But not forgetting, we've obviously got a very strong mining sector. We've also had a pretty good stock market as well. So I think when people are looking at a more liquid form of investment, or something that, it's probably a bit more volatile as well. But the stock market has been providing very good returns to investors as well. So they haven't forgotten about getting burnt over the last 4 to 5 years. And if they've got some spare money and maybe a smaller amount of money, they're more than happy to put that into the stock market. So it's not just about leaving money sitting in the bank. I think they're looking to invest, but they're just a bit burnt from the last 4 or 5 years in the WA property market.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. The other question I have, very quickly, was land sales. Where are land sales at we've had the home builder package, etc. Now that the builders are all under stress and under a lot of pressure, doing to land sales?
Yeah, so across the board, whether it be in the Perth metro area or even any of the regional townships as well, compared to this time last year, land sales are well down. And when I say well down, I wouldn't say that the land sales market is dead, but compared to where it was this time last year, when the government was stimulating, obviously, the construction sector and providing those grants for people that were looking to build, and obviously first home buyers as well. People made really good use of those grants. It was really worth their time, and hence they tied up all the builders as well. And whether it's in Perth, but there's a greater selection of builders in Perth than there is in regional WA, but certainly in regional WA, the reason why the land sales market has really slowed up is because it's going to take you a good couple of years before you're actually going to be able to have your home completed on the block of land that you buy. So, and that therefore places more of a pressure on the established housing market. Because people say, well, we could buy a block of land and build, but it's going to take us 2 years, versus why don't we buy something that's already there and it's only 1 or 2 years old. So that's why the established housing market has been so hot, particularly in the regional areas as well.
And once again, another little point associated with our title, the calm before the storm. That will drive more people to go into the established market. And yep, that'll drive things even further. So once again, there's another answer to our question. Hey, that is good. Now, I think importantly, very importantly,
notice board.
Oh, you've jumped the gun.
I love the notice board.
Okay, I've got to find it first. Where are we? What do we need?
We're going to have to call this what's on the notice board.
Yes.
Where is the notice board? Not what's on the notice board. Where is the notice board?
I know you get a little bit itsy bitsy when I do it a little bit later than normal. But for those who want to know what's on the notice board, if you've got something, whether it be quirky, whether it be something, be it the kids' school fete, be it you're doing a business promo, or whatever the case may be, let us know. Drop us a note, and we will make mention of it. What's on the notice board, and it's obviously WA focused, but we do a few other little things as well. So I can tell you today, the reason why our guest couldn't make it today, one Dean Stonehouse, we're going to discuss a few things finance. It's his mum's birthday today. So Mrs. Stonehouse, happy birthday. And he said, TV, I've just realised it's mum's birthday tomorrow and I can't make it. So he had to postpone, but I think he'll be right for next week. So we'll look forward to that. So that's what's on today. I can also tell you, because this time of the year is very busy for agriculture shows, and I can tell you that on Saturday there's no football this weekend. Of course, there's the bye before the big GF. It's the Bruce Rock and Districts Agricultural Show. So Bruce Rock, 18th September. I knew you'd be excited.
And mate, I'm over the moon.
I don't think you need to be silly, all right? For those people in Bruce Rock, have you ever been to Bruce Rock?
No.
He's a hell of a fella. He's a great guy. And also next week, we will make mention of this later, but it is 25th next Saturday is grand final day in Perth. It will be huge. The only disappointing part about this, I find it very disappointing that the AFL, not the state government, the AFL have said no to a parade. I think that's really, really disappointing. But
have they?
Yep. No parade.
I missed that.
No parade. Very disappointing. I think that's a bit of a, I don't know.
Why is that? Are they trying to keep that for their Victorian special? That's their thing.
I wouldn't be so cynical to suggest that. But
that's what it is, isn't it?
Oh, that's my observation. I think they said for safety reasons. So I've got no idea what that means.
Safety? Anyway, we're the safest state.
Yeah, I don't wind me up. I just find it really bizarre. So it's so today is that so 18th is that, and also tomorrow is International. You'll love this. Tomorrow is International Dot Day. International Dot Day.
Where do you find this stuff, mate?
And I can tell you. No, I'll tell you something. It's you've got to be
International Dot Day.
I'll tell you what International Dot Day. So
what are you looking for? What are you looking for down there?
I'm looking for International Dot Day. I've got this thing for you. So International Dot Day. There is a book called The Dot by Peter Reynolds inspired International Dot Day.
This is fascinating TV.
And the idea is it was a caring teacher who encouraged a student named Vashti to make her mark. And Vashti couldn't draw, so she simply made a single dot on a piece of paper. And it was to inspire young people, etc., and so a teacher introduced his classroom to the dot, and the rest, as they say, is history. They now have International Dot Day on September the 15th. You get your creative juices flowing, and it's established to celebrate creativity, courage, and collaboration. And the celebration is easily one of the most fun days of the year. So
if I didn't know you better, mate, I would have thought you made all that up on the spot.
And I can also tell you, not only that, tomorrow, that's tomorrow, International Dot Day,
but not only is the International Line Day.
No, Bruce Rock and District Agriculture Show on the 18th of September, which is on Saturday, and also they are sharing International Eat an Apple Day.
Oh, God.
Each third Saturday of September on International Eat Apple Day, you're encouraged to eat a juicy apple. Eat one or as many as you want. There you go. But it originated, I don't know where it originated, but anyway, how to observe international, look it up. There it is.
No, mate, I've got better things to do with my time than look up that crap.
I did that about 2 minutes before we went to air. There you go. So that's what's on the notice board. I can't think of anything else I think of. Oh, what I must mention, I must make mention, on Saturday gone was Are You OK Day.
Yes.
That means I'm all over that when it comes to Are You OK? And I feel, and I particularly reach out to our people. We talk about our East Coast and there's a lot of issues going on there. And that is something that's been a discussion. But, it's really, really important, as you and I both know, that to keep in touch with your friends. And only today I spoke to a mate as I was driving back or driving up to Geraldton. And, he told me a sad story about a friend of his. And the last person they would have thought to find him, unfortunately deceased. And, no one, from what he was saying, is that no one could believe doesn't seem possible that, such a thing. So it's really important to talk to people. It's really important. We're all under a lot of pressure, a lot of duress, different reasons for different people. And us blokes in particular, we need to, the girls I think are pretty good at it, but us blokes got to be, I think we're getting better, but we've got to just for each other and particularly your mates and ensure that we're all good to go. So that was on Saturday, but I think that should be every day. So watch out for your mates and make sure everyone's Are You OK?
Absolutely.
Righto. That's that. We will quickly go to the head. Just brilliant. Hey,
that's cool.
One thing that I haven't had the opportunity to read this properly, but there was a headline in the paper I think it's on ABC Online. Yes, it is. House prices jumped 52,600 in 3 months, and the Reserve Bank says it can't do much about it, which we touched on earlier on. And so the Australian house prices are now 19% higher than they were before the pandemic, but the Reserve Bank of Australia will not be lifting interest rates to dampen them. The Reserve Bank expects to keep the cash rate at record lows for a few more years. And he says the governor, Philip Lowe, says of the Reserve Bank, says he understands concerns about soaring house prices. And I think they're focusing particularly on the East Coast, but eventually that flows on to WA. But it's not the Reserve Bank's job to target them. So, and of course, the Delta outbreak in New South Wales has delayed the economic recovery, not derailed it. So all those things are influencing. So getting back to what we've been talking about before about the property market, and if you're looking at buying, etc., this market is going to continue on for some time yet, because the way, and you'll remember maybe 3-4 episodes ago, we were talking about, there was a lot of talk about interest rates going to be increasing, but by the looks of that, and that's been released today, by the looks of that, it would suggest that interest rates are not going to rise in any time soon, and perhaps might be a bit longer than 2023 or 2024.
By the sounds of it, yep.
And the other observation was that housing prices were 19% higher than they were before the pandemic, and Australian stock prices, you know how we're talking about investors, Australian stock prices were around 10% higher.
Oh, is that right?
On across the board, that is.
Yeah, right.
So there's an interesting little observation.
Yeah.
So that was one headline. The other headline that I also read was that you're about to retire but still have a mortgage. What should you do? And I think this will influence us to perhaps get a financial planner or an accountant on, because what they are saying is it's probably not in your interest. There's a lot of people that are retirees or thereabouts retiring and still got a debt. They're suggesting that it's probably not. And obviously this is where the independent advice comes from. But more Australians are retiring with a big mortgage. Should they use superannuation to pay it off? And the general consensus is maybe not, because then what are you going to live off? What are you going to live off?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think
good
that
point.
could be a very good topic for down the track, I reckon, if we get the right guest on.
Yeah.
I've also reached out to Mortgage Mates again, and I also came across a lady that I was in the other day, and she does black garlic. She and her husband.
She does what?
They make black garlic. And I tried their paste, and I thought they're looking for property and rah-de-rah-de-rah. And I thought, oh, that'd be a nice little subject, something different. So I'm going to reach out to them. I did have a chat to Dion, and I said, hey, we do a podcast. Would you like to come on as our guest and have a chat about it, what they plan to do and what they're trying to do? And they're looking for property, so we can talk about their product because it's pretty rare, but also in a property sense as well. So there you go. And Australian property, how much harder it is to save for a house deposit now. It's becoming a lot more harder, and that was on realestate.com, where they're suggesting that it's getting harder and harder. In March, the median property price, and this is in Melbourne, for example, was $330,000. In March 2021, it's $824,000.
What was that first price? What year?
March 2006.
Oh, right.
March 2021, 824,000.
Wow.
So, we talk about affordability so all of a sudden the 20% deposit in March 2006, you'd only required 66,000. In March 2021, it's now 164,000, close to 165,000.
Yeah.
So, it'd be an interesting statistic to do for WA, I reckon.
Yeah. Yep.
Because like a lot of these things, they do these statistics, they do these headlines, and it's focused on the East Coast.
That's right.
Hey, mate.
Yeah.
I think we've just about done our dash for tonight. Been great to get back on board. But as always, I think we should finish with our if question. I'm going to leave this one to you. There you go.
I think just watching you do your little jig and dance to that, mate, is probably made my night. Okay, so my if question for you tonight is, as soon as the borders open, let's just say that the borders open for a Christmas break, where would you take your loved one on a Christmas break? If the borders are open and it's unrestricted, where would you take your loved one?
Are you talking borders international or borders?
International.
Okay,
no, international.
Singapore.
Really? Straight off the bat, you definitely go to Singapore?
Yeah, my brother's there. And I would love the opportunity to catch up with him. He's like my best mate. He's a couple of years younger than me. He's been stuck there on his own. He's got a partner, but she's not always there. And Singapore's a great spot. I love going there. I mean, a quick visit. I would love to see my son in London, but I think that's more likely being able to go to Singapore before I went anywhere. That's where I'd be going for Christmas.
Yeah,
Even though
right.
I've got my kids here, my grandkids here,
Yeah.
I and my wife, Jude, my princess, would certainly be the same way.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And you?
Good. I'd probably go to the States. I'd love to take the wife and kids to Canada. We spoke about Canada and have a white Christmas, basically. We spoke about that, and that was meant to be maybe last year, I think it was, that the big plan was when we were going to do it, but then obviously COVID got in the way of that, and I don't think our finances would have allowed that anyway. But yeah, certainly a trip over to the States. And if we didn't make it to Canada, then I've got some very close cousins of ours that are in San Francisco, so I'd love to get over and see those guys.
Yep. Well, we were meant to be in London and doing Europe this year because it's Jude's milestone birthday, and our son lives over there. But of course, when that happens, who knows? Maybe it's closer than we think. But if the opportunity arises, I think I'd be pretty. We'd be pretty keen to do the Singapore trip. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board back again and doing what we do. Look forward. I've definitely ensured that I've got a few guests lined up. We'll definitely follow that through. At this stage, we'll definitely have a guest for next week, and we'll be talking finance and a range of topics then. For those, our podcast is out tomorrow, every Wednesday. For those of you, please send through some questions over the next week or two. Any questions you've got about property. Enjoy your buying. Have some fun. Enjoy the week off before. And if you've got your sport on. Did you know the hockey club that my dad founded, they are in the grand final up here in Geraldton, and I'm going up to see them on Saturday. That's another.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Haven't been in the grand final. The women have, but the men haven't been. The men's A grade haven't been in the grand final for a long time. So I don't think they've won since His Lordship coached them. So
wow.
I'm hoping that they have some success. So all those two out there in the WA got their finals on, be it netball, be it hockey, be it football. Have fun. There's always a winner. There's always a loser. And if you're a supporter, support the right way. Very, very important. Mate, got to go. Take care. Look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thanks.
Sorry, mate, I cut you off.